"You pathetic old man. This house is mine now. Get out before I have you committed." Those words came from Brandon, the boy I'd raised for 22 years after adopting him from foster care when he was 6. He was standing in my workshop, waving legal papers in my face while his girlfriend Cassidy filmed the whole thing on her phone. The same workshop where I'd taught him to build his first birdhouse, where we'd restored a classic Mustang together, where I'd shown him that working with your hands wasn't just labor, it was art. You won't believe how this father-son bond turned into the most satisfying revenge I've ever served. But before I tell you how I completely destroyed Brandon's carefully constructed scheme, smash that subscribe button, because justice stories like this don't come around often. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare began. 3 months earlier, everything seemed right in my world. I was Walter Cunningham, 69 years old, recently retired from my career as a structural engineer for the State Highway Department. My wife Claire had passed 5 years ago from cancer, and I was learning to find peace alone in our 3-bedroom craftsman house on Pinewood Drive. Brandon had always been my reason for getting up in the morning. I'd adopted him when I was 47, after Claire and I had exhausted every fertility treatment available. He came to us angry and broken. His biological father was in prison, his mother had abandoned him at a gas station, and he'd been shuffled through 4 foster homes in 2 years. "Dad, you gave me a real life," he'd tell me during our Sunday barbecues at my place. "I don't know what kind of man I'd be without you." I'd clap him on the shoulder. "That's what fathers do, son. We show up." The house on Pinewood Drive was more than shelter. It was proof that broken things could be beautiful again. Claire and I had bought it as a foreclosure in 1998 and spent 8 years bringing it back to life. The front porch where Claire used to drink her morning tea. The garage workshop where Brandon and I had spent countless weekends building and fixing things together. The backyard with the fire pit where we'd had deep talks about life, responsibility, and what it means to be a good man. This wasn't just real estate. This was our family's foundation. When Brandon graduated from tech school with his IT certification 4 years ago, I was bursting with pride. I'd paid for the entire program, $34,000, because I wanted him to have opportunities I'd never had. Claire and I hadn't been able to give him siblings, but we could give him a debt-free start in life. "Dad, I'm going to make something of myself," he said at graduation, his voice thick with emotion. "All those nights you worked extra shifts to pay for this, I won't waste it." "You're not wasting anything," I replied. "Just be honest and work hard. That's all I ask." But then the requests started piling up. "Dad, I need help with the security deposit for my place," Brandon mentioned one Saturday while we were working on my truck. "Landlord wants $4,000 total. My first paycheck doesn't come for 3 weeks." I transferred the money that afternoon. "Everyone needs help starting out," I told him. A few months later, "Dad, my truck's transmission is shot. I found a good used one, but the mechanic wants cash up front, $2,800. Can you spot me until my bonus comes through?" I wrote the check. The bonus never materialized, but I didn't mention it. Then came the credit card emergencies. "Dad, I had some car repairs and medical bills. Could you help me clear these balances? Just this once, and I'll budget better." $6,000 to pay off his cards, with promises of changed behavior. Each time, Brandon would give me a bear hug and swear it was the last time. Each time, his girlfriend Cassidy would be there with her fake smile and designer handbag. Each time, I told myself that helping your son was what fathers did. But deep down, Claire's voice whispered warnings. She used to say, "Walter, there's a difference between supporting someone and enabling them." I was starting to understand. Have you ever had someone take advantage of your kindness? Let me know in the comments. But Brandon was about to cross a line that would cost him everything. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon in October. I was in my workshop, restoring an antique toolbox Claire had given me for our 20th anniversary, when Brandon's truck pulled up. He hadn't mentioned he was coming by, which was unusual. He walked in carrying a leather portfolio and wearing dress clothes, not his usual jeans and t-shirt. "Dad, we need to talk about your living situation," he said, not even glancing at the toolbox I was working on. I set down my sandpaper. "What about my living situation?" He opened the portfolio and pulled out official-looking documents. "This house is too much for you now. You're pushing 70, Dad. What if you fall in the workshop and no one finds you for days? What if you can't handle the maintenance anymore?" "Brandon, I'm 69, not 99. I'm in perfect health. But it's not sustainable, he interrupted, his tone sharp. 3 bedrooms, big workshop, huge yard. You don't need all this space. And the upkeep must be draining your retirement. I wanted to tell him that 40 years as a structural engineer had taught me exactly how to maintain a house, that my retirement was solid, that I loved this place. But something in his eyes stopped me, something cold and calculating I'd never seen before. Cassidy and I found this great assisted living place about 30 miles out, he continued, pulling out glossy brochures. Oak Ridge Senior Community. They've got activities, 3 meals a day, housekeeping service, everything handled. No more worrying about repairs or yard work or being alone. The brochures showed elderly people playing cards and doing crafts. It looked institutional and depressing, nothing like the home Claire and I had built. He slid papers across my workbench. We can handle selling the house for you. Deal with all the complicated legal stuff, real estate agents, inspections. All you need to do is sign. My hands weren't steady as I picked up the documents. Power of attorney forms giving Brandon complete control over my financial decisions. A pre-filled application for Oak Ridge. They'd already put down a $2,500 deposit. And at the bottom, a quitclaim deed. You want me to sign over my house? My voice came out rough. It's for your protection, Dad. The house is worth about $590,000 with the market right now. After we pay for your assisted living and cover your expenses, there'll be plenty left for your care for years. My expenses? What expenses? Claire and I had paid off the mortgage 20 years ago. I had no debt, solid retirement income, and excellent health insurance. Brandon, I don't have expenses that require selling my house. I'm financially secure. But what about future medical costs? He said quickly. Healthcare gets expensive when you're older. I have Medicare, supplemental insurance, and long-term care insurance. Claire made sure we were covered. Dad, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Cassidy and I are trying to help you before you can't make good decisions anymore. Before I can't make good decisions? I designed bridges and highway overpasses for 40 years. I'd managed million-dollar projects. And now my son was suggesting I was losing mental capacity? I need time to review these, I said carefully. Brandon's expression hardened, and I saw something that made my blood run cold. The same entitled, manipulative look I'd seen on my own brother's face 30 years ago, right before he'd tried to cheat our mother out of her property. Dad, I'm trying to do this the easy way. Don't make me do this the hard way. The hard way? What the hell did that mean? But that's not even the worst part. That evening, after Brandon left, I sat in my workshop and really examined those documents. Something felt wrong in my gut. In 4 decades of engineering work, I'd reviewed thousands of contracts, permits, and legal documents. You don't last in that field without learning to read the fine print and spot problems before they become disasters. These papers weren't just aggressive, they were predatory. What Brandon didn't know was that structural engineers don't just understand buildings. We understand systems, load-bearing capacity, stress points, and most importantly, we recognize when something is designed to collapse. These documents were designed to strip me of everything while making it look legitimate. That evening, I called my old friend Henry Blackwell, who'd practiced elder law for 35 years before semi-retiring. Henry and I had served together on the City Planning Commission, and I trusted him completely. Walt, bring those papers to my office first thing tomorrow, he said after I described what Brandon had presented. Don't sign anything, don't discuss it further, and don't let Brandon know you're consulting an attorney. The next morning, I drove to Henry's office. His face grew grimmer with each page he reviewed, occasionally making notes and shaking his head. This isn't about protecting you, Walter. Look at this section hidden in the middle of page 4. He pointed to dense legal language in tiny font. They're not selling your house to fund your care. This quitclaim deed transfers the property directly to Brandon for zero compensation. It's a gift, not a sale. My stomach dropped. What? And this power of attorney is egregious. It gives Brandon complete control over every asset you own, retirement accounts, bank accounts, life insurance, investment portfolios. Once you sign this, Brandon could liquidate everything, and you'd have no legal recourse because you'd have granted him that authority. I felt sick. But the Oak Ridge application. I looked them up. Basic care runs about $3,200 monthly. Walter, Your house is worth over $500,000. Even after taxes and fees, that's enough to fund 20 years of premier care. But that's not what's happening here. Henry pulled out a calculator. Based on these documents, they're planning to take your house, warehouse you in budget senior housing, and keep the money. This is textbook elder financial abuse, Walt. I've seen it 100 times, but never from someone's own kid. I stared at the documents, finally seeing the trap clearly. My own son. Your adopted son who you've given everything to, Henry said quietly. I'm sorry, Walt, but Brandon is attempting to commit fraud. Legal fraud if you sign these papers, but fraud nonetheless. What happened next shocked everyone. That afternoon, I did something I never imagined doing. I treated my son like a suspect in one of the fraud cases I used to help investigate for the state. I went to my bank and froze my accounts with password protection. I contacted my insurance company and put alerts on all my policies. I filed a police report about the unauthorized Oak Ridge deposit made with my credit card information. But I wasn't finished gathering evidence. I'd spent 40 years working with law enforcement on structural failure investigations. I knew how to document evidence, how to build an airtight case, and how to investigate without tipping off the subject. More importantly, I knew the warning signs of financial manipulation. I'd helped investigate 3 cases of contractor fraud against elderly homeowners. First call, my former colleague Pierce Donovan, who now ran a private investigation firm specializing in financial crimes and background checks. Pierce, I need complete discretion. Can you run a deep background check on Brandon Cunningham and Cassidy Thornton? I think my son is planning something, and I need to know what I'm walking into. Pierce was silent for a moment. Walt, that's your boy. You sure about this? Pierce, I think he's trying to steal my house through elder abuse. I need facts, not feelings. Damn. Okay, send me their full information. I'll have something by tomorrow afternoon. Second call, my financial advisor, Norman Hutchins, who'd managed my investments for 15 years. Norman, if someone had full power of attorney over my finances, what could they access? With the POA you're describing? Everything. Bank accounts, retirement funds, investment portfolios, life insurance cash value. Walt, what's going on? Just being cautious. Can you put extra security on my accounts? No changes without in-person verification with photo ID. Done. And Walt, if you're worried about financial abuse, document everything. Oh, I was about to document more than Brandon could imagine. The evidence started rolling in faster than I expected. Pierce called me the next day with news that made my hands shake. Walt, sit down. Brandon and Cassidy are in deep financial trouble. Cassidy has a shopping addiction, $62,000 in credit card debt across 11 cards. She's been financing a lifestyle way beyond her means. Designer clothes, expensive restaurants, luxury vacations, all on credit. What about Brandon? He's not any better. That IT job he has. He makes $52,000 a year, but they're living like they make twice that. He's $31,000 in credit card debt himself, 3 months behind on his truck payment. The one you co-signed for, by the way. And he just got a written warning at work for excessive personal internet use during work hours. My chest felt tight. So they need money badly. Desperate. But here's where it gets worse. Pierce's voice dropped. I found something else. 2 months ago, Cassidy's parents offered to pay off her credit cards if she'd move back home and get financial counseling. She refused because she'd have to give up her lifestyle. Instead, she's been pressuring Brandon to fix their money problems before her parents cut her off completely. So my house. Your house is their bailout plan. And based on browser history, I was able to access. Brandon's not great with digital security. They've been researching senior living costs and power of attorney for elderly parents and how to convince parents to downsize. Little did they know, I was just getting started. But the real smoking gun came from an unexpected source. Remember that $2,500 Oak Ridge deposit charged to my credit card? I called them directly, pretending to inquire about the application. Oh yes, Mr. Cunningham, the admissions coordinator said. Your son Brandon submitted your application about a month ago. He was quite concerned about your declining mental state. My blood pressure spiked. My declining mental state? Yes, he mentioned you'd been having memory issues and confusion. He said you'd gotten lost driving home twice recently and had left the stove on several times. He was worried you'd become a danger to yourself. None of that was true. None of it. That's interesting, I said carefully. Because I've never had memory issues, never gotten lost, and I don't even use my stove much. I mostly grill outside. The coordinator hesitated. Mr. Cunningham, are you saying your son misrepresented your condition? I'm saying my son lied to you. I'm a retired structural engineer with perfect cognitive function, and I never authorized this application or that deposit. We need to review this with our legal team. This is where it gets really good. Over the next 3 weeks, I built a case that would have impressed the state investigators I used to work with. Every document Brandon had presented was analyzed by Henry. Every financial transaction was tracked. Every lie was documented with contradicting evidence. The quitclaim deed? Henry confirmed it would transfer my house to Brandon for $0, a gift that would leave me homeless and broke. The power of attorney? Written so broadly that Brandon could sell everything I owned, drain my retirement accounts, and change my beneficiaries without my knowledge or permission. The Oak Ridge application? Based entirely on fabricated claims about cognitive decline, submitted without my knowledge or consent. But the evidence that sealed Brandon's fate came from his own girlfriend. Pierce's investigation uncovered text messages between Cassidy and her friend Taylor. Messages like, "Once we get Walt's house money, I can finally buy that Mercedes I've been eyeing." And, "Brandon says his dad is so trusting he won't even question the paperwork." And the most damning one, "The power of attorney lets us control everything. We can sell the house, take the cash, and stick him in the cheapest place we can find. He won't know until it's too late." They weren't just planning to take my house. They were planning to steal my life savings and abandon me in substandard care. You won't believe what I discovered next. For weeks after Brandon first presented those documents, he showed up at my house again. This time with Cassidy, both of them looking confident and impatient. "Dad, we really need those papers signed today," Brandon said, not even pretending to care about my well-being anymore. "The Oak Ridge spot won't hold forever, and we've got a real estate agent ready to list the house." "You've already contacted a real estate agent?" "Without my permission." Cassidy spoke up, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Well, we wanted to be prepared. The market's hot right now. We actually have an agent who thinks we could get $625,000 if we price it right and close fast." $625,000. $75,000 more than Brandon had initially mentioned. They were planning to pocket the difference before I even knew what the house was actually worth. "Actually," I said calmly, "I've had some time to think, and I've decided you might be right." Brandon's face lit up with surprise and greed. "Really? You're ready to sign?" "I'm ready to make some changes. Why don't you both sit down?" They settled onto my couch, practically buzzing with anticipation. I pulled out my own folder, considerably thicker than Brandon's had been. First, I had my attorney friend Henry review your documents. He's an elder law specialist, you know. He found some serious problems. Brandon's smile faded. "What kind of problems?" "Well, for starters, this quitclaim deed isn't transferring the house for estate planning purposes. It's gifting it to you for $0 while I'm alive, which would leave me with no home and no assets." "Dad, that's not how." "And this power of attorney? It's not a standard healthcare directive. It gives you complete financial control with no accountability, no requirement to act in my best interests, and no way for me to revoke it without your permission." Cassidy's expression shifted from sweet to calculating. Brandon looked nervous for the first time. "But the really interesting part," I continued, pulling out Pierce's investigation report, "was when I had a private investigator look into your finances." "You investigated us?" Brandon's voice rose. "That's a violation of trust. Not when you're attempting elder financial abuse," I said evenly. "Cassidy, did you think I wouldn't find out about the $62,000 in credit card debt? Or the shopping addiction? Or the text where you discussed buying a Mercedes with my house money?" Cassidy's face went white. Brandon looked like he'd been hit with a sledgehammer. "Brandon, I also found out about your $31,000 in debt, your late truck payments on the vehicle I co-signed for, and your written warning at work. But what really interested me were the text messages discussing how you'd stick me in the cheapest place and drain the accounts before I knew what happened. But wait, there's more. I also called Oak Ridge," I said, watching their faces carefully. "They told me you claimed I had memory issues, that I'd gotten lost driving, that I was leaving the stove on and becoming a danger to myself. Funny thing is, none of that is true. Dad, I was concerned about you. So concerned that you made up symptoms to convince a care facility I was mentally declining? I've had a complete cognitive evaluation by Dr. Raymond Fitzgerald at Regional Medical. Perfect score. No memory issues, no cognitive decline, no safety concerns. In fact, Dr. Fitzgerald said I'm in the top 5% for mental acuity in my age group. I pulled out the medical report. So either you genuinely believed I was declining despite no evidence whatsoever, or you deliberately fabricated a medical crisis to justify stealing my house. Which is it? Brandon started to speak, but no words came out. Cassidy grabbed her purse, clearly ready to bolt. Cassidy, sit down, I said firmly. You're not leaving until we're done here. She sat, but she looked like a trapped animal. Here's what you need to understand, I continued. I'm not some confused old man you can manipulate. I'm a licensed structural engineer who spent 40 years analyzing complex systems and identifying failure points before they collapsed. I know how to recognize when something is designed to fail. And your plan? It was built on a foundation of lies that was always going to collapse. Brandon finally found his voice. Dad, you don't understand. We're in trouble. Cassidy's parents are threatening to cut her off, and I'm underwater on everything, and we just need it. You needed to steal from your father, I finished. The man who adopted you when you were 6 years old and angry at the world. Who paid for your education, your apartment deposits, your car, your credit cards. Who spent 22 years teaching you that integrity and hard work mattered. And you repaid me by planning to rob me blind and leave me in a cheap care facility. Cassidy made one final attempt at manipulation. Walter, be reasonable. You're old, you don't need all this house, and we're your family. Families help each other. You're absolutely right, I said. Families do help each other. They don't lie about dementia. They don't steal through fraudulent legal documents. They don't text their friends about Mercedes they'll buy with stolen money. The doorbell rang. The real surprise came when I opened the door to reveal Henry Blackwell, Pierce Donovan, 2 police officers, and an adult protective services investigator named Vincent Morales. What the hell is this? Brandon demanded, jumping to his feet. This, Vincent said, stepping into my living room, is a formal investigation into attempted elder financial abuse. Mr. Cunningham has provided substantial evidence that you attempted to defraud him of his home and assets through falsified medical claims, fraudulent legal documents, and manipulation. One of the officers looked at Brandon. Mr. Cunningham, we'd like to ask you some questions about unauthorized use of your father's credit card information and text messages discussing plans to drain accounts belonging to Walter Cunningham. Brandon's face lost all color. Cassidy started crying, real tears this time, but of panic, not remorse. Brandon, Henry said, pulling out legal documents, I'm serving you with a cease and desist order. You are prohibited from contacting your father about financial matters, from accessing or using his financial information, and from representing yourself as having any authority over his affairs. Any violation will result in immediate criminal charges. The aftermath was swift and brutal for Brandon and Cassidy. The police investigation revealed that Brandon had used my credit card information, copied from my wallet during a visit, to make over $11,000 in charges I'd never authorized. That's felony credit card fraud. Brandon's employer discovered he'd been using company computers and work time to research elder care facilities and estate planning for personal benefit. Combined with his existing performance warnings, he was terminated immediately. Cassidy's parents discovered the depth of her debt and the scheme to steal from me. They paid off her credit cards with one condition. She had to move back home, end her relationship with Brandon, and enter financial counseling. She chose her parents' money over Brandon without hesitation. Brandon's truck was repossessed 3 weeks later. Without Cassidy's parents' financial support and no job, he couldn't keep up with any of his payments. His apartment was next, evicted after 2 months of non-payment. Within 4 months, Brandon had declared bankruptcy, was living in a friend's basement, and working a night shift at a warehouse loading dock. But the most satisfying consequence came from my community. Pinewood Drive is a neighborhood where men take pride in their property, their word, and their character. When word got out about what Brandon had tried to do, and in communities like ours, word always gets out, the judgment was immediate and harsh. Skip Henderson next door, who'd taught Brandon to change his oil, wouldn't speak to him when he came to get his belongings. Ray Sutton down the street, who'd helped Brandon build his first toolbox, called him a disgrace to his father's name. The Martinez brothers, who'd celebrated every one of Brandon's achievements with us, publicly called him out at the hardware store for trying to abuse his elderly father. The local veterans group I belonged to, Brandon had always been welcome at our events, banned him from all future gatherings. The trades community I'd worked with for 40 years made sure everyone knew what he'd tried to do. Brandon's entire reputation evaporated. Friends stopped taking his calls. Former co-workers avoided him. Even his own roommate kicked him out once he learned Brandon had tried to steal his father's house through fraud. 6 months after that confrontation, I received a letter from Brandon. Not an apology. He still wasn't capable of that. But a desperate request for money to cover basic expenses. He'd lost everything, couldn't find decent work, and had nowhere to turn. I wrote back one sentence. You made your choices. Now be man enough to live with them. A year later, I heard through Henry that Brandon was working 2 minimum-wage jobs, living in a studio apartment in a rough neighborhood, and still trying to dig himself out of bankruptcy. Cassidy had gotten engaged to someone else, someone with family money and no moral backbone to steal from. The house I'd almost lost. I'm still living in it, still working in my workshop, still maintaining the legacy Claire and I built together. I've updated my will to leave everything to a foster care organization that helps older kids find permanent families, kids like Brandon used to be. I started volunteering with a group that teaches seniors about financial abuse red flags. My story has helped dozens of elderly men recognize warning signs before signing predatory documents. And Brandon? I haven't spoken to him in over a year. He sends occasional texts saying he's changed and asking for one more chance. I don't respond. People sometimes ask if I regret destroying my son's life. My answer never changes. I didn't destroy anything. Brandon destroyed his own future the moment he decided greed mattered more than integrity. I simply refused to be his victim. The irony is perfect. He tried to have me declared mentally incompetent so he could steal my home. Instead, he proved I was sharp enough to catch him, document his fraud, and protect myself legally. He wanted to take everything I'd built. Instead, he lost everything he had, including the father who would have given him the world if he'd just asked honestly. Justice was served, and karma had the final word. If you enjoyed seeing an entitled adopted son get what he deserved, you'll love my next story about a nephew who tried to convince his uncle to sell his classic car collection for safety reasons, until the uncle revealed those worthless old cars were worth over $2 million and already promised to a museum. What's the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen? Share in the comments. And if this story hit home, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of Justice Served Cold.
If this story got you thinking, go ahead and hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more real stories that hit deep, and tap the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. And hey, if you know someone who needs to hear this one, share it with them. Thanks for watching.